Good afternoon, everyone. I have both the joy and the challenge of closing out today's event. I'm sorry for rushing up on stage. We had to bring in our own laptop. I know there's a certain irony of the Unplug guys bringing their own laptop, but some of our videos didn't quite convert, and we really wanted to see you to see them today. This talk is very much going to be around unintended consequences. And I think most of us, when we think about the big changes we've had in our lives, they come with a wide range of unintended consequences, things we might have never planned for. Or to put this another way, the tech writer Paul Virilio, when he was writing in Wired magazine a few years ago, he said, when you invent the ship, you also invent the shipwreck. And I want to talk about some of these shipwrecks and some of the challenges when it comes to our own technology. And there are a wide variety of ones. For example, in the last few years, data protection. Uber has come out recently, obviously their big data breach of 58 million people. Many of us are thinking more and more about where is our data going and how do we protect ourselves. Social media, which was meant to bring us all closer together, has actually often ended up dividing us or asking us to question the quality of information that we have presented to us in the world. And The Economist, this is their predictions for 2018. One of their big predictions is that we're effectively in 2018 going to have a potential tech lash. That, you know, when you meet someone new and you go through this wonderful romantic stage and you love them and you think they're brilliant, and then a few years in you still love them, but they've also become your worst nightmare. That is also part of our relationship with technology. Now, we are not pessimists. We are not talking about some kind of dystopian future, or we are not anti-technology. But I think what we have noticed, and this is the same with lots of other industries, there are a lot more ships in the world nowadays, but you hear an awful lot less about the shipwrecks. And us as leaders in organizations, as parents, as individuals, I think this is a really good time for us to ask some questions about our relationship with our technology on a day-to-day basis. And I want to focus, as I have a short space of time with you today, on this particular thing. One of these is something I think that has come into all of our lives in the last few years. This is the 10th version of the iPhone, launched in Ireland, the 10-year anniversary version of the iPhone, launched in Ireland 3 years ago. And I want to take you back a little bit to show you what has changed in the space of 10 years. Back in the year 2007, we had about 120 million smartphones sold in the world that year. Anyone want to take a guess how many smartphones we are on track to sell in the year 2017 worldwide? A billion is not a bad guess, and 2 billion isn't either. It is 1.7 billion smartphones worldwide. And we have almost never adapted to a new product or a new piece of equipment in our lives as quickly as we have adapted to the smartphone. You very much likely have one, your teenagers have one, and if they don't, they're bloody well telling you about it. And it's very likely, actually, smartphone reach amongst those over the age of 65, 70%. So don't think this is just a young people's thing. Many, many older adults are also getting involved as well. And when you look at what we use on these devices on a day-to-day basis, this is data from Excelicom trying to capture what happens in an internet minute, most of these products were either in their infancy or did not exist 10 years ago. So we have shrunk down the computer into a pocket-sized device that is literally on us 24/7, and we have created a whole bunch of new and wonderful things and ways to live our life through this device. And this is where I want to talk about 3 particular shipwrecks or 3 particular challenges. And here's an example of what we think is challenge number 1.
Really? time for a phone to save us from our phones. New Windows Phone, designed to get you in and out and back to life.
That was an advert from Microsoft, of all companies, launching their Windows Phone 7 years ago. But I think it touches on something that many of us can relate to. This is data from Deloitte's Global Mobile Consumer Survey in the UK and Ireland. And what we are seeing is that we have become attached and ever prevalent with these devices. They're with us first thing in the morning, last thing at night, with our friends and family. There's nowhere where they haven't become. And if you feel maybe I use my device more than I would ideally like to, you are not the only one. And what we are seeing is, even if it doesn't impact you personally, there's no doubt that all of these millennials and all of these Generation Z that are joining your organization have not grown up in a world without this. It is the norm for them to be on it all of the time, and they are struggling more than any other group to try and manage their time around it. We see this particularly, I think, in the sense of wellness when we think about work-life balance. Ernst & Young, a global survey of 8 countries, saying 1/3 of us are finding work-life balance more challenging in the last year. And Fastnet, the talent group here in Ireland, a similar survey, again saying technology is a big challenge for work-life balance. And I think it is a kind of a blessing and a curse, because it's almost like you're wearing 2 different pairs of clothes at the same time. When you are at home, you still have one work shoe on, right? Because work can reach out to you and get you. But often when you're in work, you often have a personal shoe on, because all of your friends and families and other people can distract you from your work. How else do we see this? This is data from Accord, the marriage counselling agency in Ireland. Their last year's annual report saying 1 in 5 couples that now present for marriage counselling, technology is a factor. And many, many people, when they say us, they say, oh, I'm not so bad in it, but my husband and wife, they are the ones that need to change. Let's go even more intimate. The Irish Times 2 years ago did a Sex in Ireland survey. They surveyed 9,500 adults in the island of Ireland. And again, what we're seeing is when technology is present in the bedroom, it is having a negative impact on our ability to connect. Some people ask us in these presentations, what about the 2% who have a positive impact? The Irish Times didn't actually publish that information, so I'll have to leave that to your imagination. But the point I think I'm trying to make with all of this is that when technology is present, it can make it difficult to us to fully focus on what's in front of us, whether that's something in our work lives or something in our personal lives. So that's challenge number 1, that I think we're connected 24/7. Let me give you an example of challenge number 2.
I was in a relationship for a few years, and I think in the time I was in the relationship, all dating communication went exclusively to text. You can't call anybody anymore. If you call someone, they're like, what? Are you on fire? Then quit wasting my time. Text me that shit. And I don't like texting people, especially girls. There's always miscommunication that happens. This is a situation I get into all the time. I'll text a girl, she texts me back right away. I text her back right away, she texts me back right away. I text her back right away, she texts me back right away. I text her back right away, she texts me back right away. Then I'll say something like, all right, cool, so you want to get pizza on Tuesday? And then I don't hear anything. And I'm like, what just happened? I know you read that shit. You responded to 20 other things I just said. What, do you not like me anymore? You don't have 2 seconds to say, yes, I want to get pizza, or no, I don't want to get pizza? Would you check your phone into a locker and go ride a roller coaster for a few hours? What's the deal? And after a few hours of no response, I get real upset. And I just want to send a text that says something like, well, guess who just got uninvited to the pizza party? You did, because I hate you now. Girl always writes something back. Sorry, I was at my niece's ballet recital. We had to turn off our phones. Whatever, we're done. I finished that pizza hours ago. I'm with my friend Brian. He's nice to me.
That is US comedian Aziz Ansari, for those of you who don't know. But I guess it's an interesting question, isn't it? Which is, if you send an email, or if you receive an email, sorry, I'm not sure what's happening with our connection there. If you receive an email, what's the normal response time? or how long does it take before the other person doesn't reply to you that you start feeling, hang on a minute, I'm starting to feel a bit hurt, or I'm starting to feeling a bit offended about this. And technology on a day-to-day basis is very good at interrupting our attention and keeping our attention, perhaps ideally when we would ideally like it to. Let me give you some examples of this. This is the campaign, it's called Time Well Spent. They surveyed 200,000 iPhone users and got them to rate certain apps in their phone about how happy they were on the time they spent on them. And they found that there was a particular types of apps that seemed to take our focus and attention away or interrupt us from recharging and recovering more than we would ideally like to. Does anyone want to take a guess what the top 3 categories of those apps were? What kind of apps do you use on a day-to-day basis that take you away from your focus and attention? Yes, social media was the 3rd most popular that takes us away. So WhatsApp, everything was included in social media. The 2nd or the 1st? Not email or banking, no. I will reveal the number 1 was actually the dating apps because there is nothing like feeling someone is interested in having a relationship with you to take you away from what you were paying attention to. Number 2 was actually mobile gaming, things like Candy Crush and so on. And in number 3, it was Facebook and the other big social media apps and brands. And for us, it's not that we think tech companies are evil or anything like that, but I think we have to remember their business goals can often be a little bit different to our own life goals. So a lot of people, when you think, oh, Google is free, YouTube is free, Facebook is free, the reason they are free is because effectively you are the product. Your time and your attention is the product that they then sell to advertisers, and that's how these $500 billion companies make their money. Let me give you a very specific example of this. This is Reed Hastings. He is the CEO of Netflix. He was asked at the start of this year on a shareholder earnings call what he felt Netflix's 3 biggest barriers to growth were. What were its biggest competitors? And he mentioned Google, who own YouTube, and Facebook, who are doing a lot more video, as the top 2. Does anyone want to guess what the 3rd biggest competitor was that he felt was blocking Netflix's growth? What he said was sleep. He said, and for those of you who watch Netflix regularly, I'm sure you can relate. And if you talk like, God, this was a bit of a one-off comment, I'm sure the PR department rolled it back the next day. The day after, the official Twitter page actually put up that sleep is my greatest enemy. And even if Netflix is kind of joking around a bit, what does it kind of say to us when a company comes out, and we've heard all day the benefits of sleep, saying, this is my greatest enemy. And they're not kidding around. Let me show you a product. It's called Netflix Socks. Netflix Socks basically kind of have an accelerometer and the same technology that Fitbit uses to decide whether or not you've fallen asleep. So if you fall asleep, the socks will detect it and pause the show you were watching at that particular moment. So that's all well and good in our personal lives. How does this relate to work? Well, the Career Builder, an organization in the US, surveyed 2,200 organizations last year, asking them, what do you think are the biggest productivity killers in your offices? What is happening that people are wasting time on? And 3 out of the top 4 things have now become tech-related. So when we're trying to do our best work, we are on our cell phones, we are browsing around social media, and we're being distracted by the internet. Anyone want to guess what that one we have blanked out in the middle was? It is non-tech related. What's the biggest productivity killer at work? It was office gossip, actually. And how this implements itself on a day-to-day basis is we are jumping around and lots of different multitasking. And I think what we like to believe is that if I am doing a task and I get interrupted, I can go back and give that task my full time and attention. The reality is there is often what is called a residue or a tension residue of that interruption. That is the feeling you get if you're really focused on someone or something and somebody grabs your attention and you've lost your flow, and it can take you up to 20 to 25 minutes to get back on track. And in a world where we're constantly being buzzed and pop-ups and so on, what's this doing to our focus and productivity? So that's challenge number 2, how technology can interrupt and keep our attention longer than we'd ideally like it to. Here's an example of challenge number 3.
There's so much kind of information about the world nowadays, and it's hard to know what you need and what you don't need. 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week, this relentless stream of shit is headed for your fucking head. And every time a piece of useless information goes in, it pushes older, wiser information further down into the muck, makes it harder to understand in dreams. Now, there's no escaping this fucking, it's relentless. Sandra Bullock's husband is thinking of moving to Texas in order to be closer to their children. How the fuck? He hasn't even decided yet. He's only thinking about it. I didn't go looking for that information, but it did in the head. Spent the whole day relaxing between the 2 ears. I mean something for a drink later on that night. The only thing fucking thing I can think of saying to him. I say Sandra Bullock's husband is in Texas.
So that is Irish comedian Tommy Tiernan, for those of you who don't know. And as he said, he didn't go looking for that information, and yet somehow it found itself. I don't know what's happening with our... Sorry? Oh yeah, it's okay, fine. He didn't go looking for that information, but somehow that information found itself in front of him. And how much are we consuming on a day-to-day basis, whether it is the Sandra Bullock's husband or the project that you have been CC'd on 47 times that maybe isn't immediately on your radar, do we consume? And this kind of leads us on to a sense of information overload. There is so much out there going on in the world now that more and more of our day is spent just trying to keep up. And we're not giving that kind of rest and recharge and off time that our brains really need. Harvard Business Review also talked about this in terms of collaboration overload between your phone, WhatsApp, Skype, email, social media. There are more and more ways we can communicate. And often in organizations, we have our employees constantly communicating with each other in these little bite-sized chunks and not necessarily developing the deeper human connections that drive high performance, that drive trust, that drive resilience, that drive getting through tough times together. And Cal Newport in the United States wrote a whole book on this subject called Deep Work. He categorizes it as this. There was a report from McKinsey that came out two days ago saying 1/3 of our jobs by 2030 are potentially under threat from artificial intelligence. And what that report was saying is, as individuals, we need to be looking at or deep work, or problem solving, or creativity, or innovation. And yet at the moment, an awful lot of our jobs are spent in this shallow work. Tasks we're doing while distracted. We're bouncing around emails and so on and so forth. So that is about 20 minutes of challenges. Hopefully I have not made you too depressed. I want to talk about some solutions, because I think our passion and our drive in Unplug is in a world that looks like this and will only continue to look probably more and more like this. How do we do our highest quality work? How do we really focus on that? And when we're not working, how do we really rest and recover and recharge and give our best at home? And before I tell you some tips, I do want to introduce the concept of New Year's resolutions, which I'm sure many of us will be making in the next month. So often, as individuals and in organizations, we have things that we think are good for us, or we know they're good for us, and we make very well-meaning plans to go about bringing change, and often we don't. And some of these small tasters I'm going to give you from our big toolkit is actually much more focused around not necessarily setting goals for yourself, but even thinking about your environment, thinking about the device in your hand or the environment around you. And I really believe actually by changing that, you can have this kind of system that will often stick with you in the long term. So 3 particular areas, and I will go through them all as quick as I can. The first thing I want you to start thinking about is how you can reconfigure and reshape your devices and the products you use on a day-to-day basis. Let me give you an example of why I think this is important. This is an experiment done by the Cornell University Food and Brand Lab. It's called the Bottomless Soup Bowl Experiment. Effectively, the psychologists decided to play a trick on participants, giving them a bowl of soup that would never run out. And what happened when this bowl of soup never ran out is, 1, they ate 74% more soup, which isn't good for calorie intake, but 2, they didn't actually feel full at the end of it because they looked down and said, there must be more soup in the bowl. Let me give you a variation of this. You know the corporate dinner you go to, where instead of pouring your own glass of wine, as soon as your glass of wine is half empty, somebody comes and tops it up for you? Think about your behavior on that night versus another night, because our brains are very bad at predicting how much we're consuming if we don't have clear visual cues for when it runs out. And how does our tech products take advantage of this? In a whole bunch of ways. So Netflix, when you finish watching an episode, what does Netflix do? Automatically pops up and says, by the way, that cliffhanger we left you on, there's more content out there, which means you don't feel satisfied and fulfilled. And even that few seconds where you have to rewatch the intro, where your brain kicks in and you go, hang on, Netflix has now decided to let you skip that just in case you were thinking about something else. You can actually turn this feature off. It's in Netflix's settings, and therefore consume Netflix much more mindfully. It's much the same with Facebook. Facebook has an infinite scrolling news feed. Facebook never says to you, you're kind of done with Facebook today. Maybe you can go back to something else, or you've consumed everything. Again, with Facebook, you can do things like turn off autoplay on videos. There's certain pieces of software you can get that can limit your time on it, and we will show you those in a minute. Let's look at something like YouTube. So when you watch a video on YouTube, what does YouTube do on the right-hand side? It says, thank you for watching this video. Have you seen all these other interesting videos that are out there on the internet that you may not have consumed yet? This is a free Chrome add-in called DF, or Distraction-Free YouTube. And say you tick that box there at the top that says hide sidebar, you can watch YouTube like this, without the sidebar and without being sucked into more and more content. News as well works much the same way for those of you who consume news on mobile or on apps. Think of the amount of breaking news that happens in a day versus that used to happen 20 years ago. We have never had so much breaking and urgent and important news in the world. And again, a lot of that is designed to keep us sucked in. I think as well, think about your phone home screen. That is something you often look at up to 100 times a day. And if your phone home screen looks something like this, what's going to happen? You're going to get sucked in and you're going to get absorbed. Many people now are creating what they call a tools-only home screen. So you put your social media, you put your email, you put the kind of things that tend to suck you in off it. So you either delete the app or put it right there at the back, so you need to swipe 3 or 4 times to get access to it. Because for so often what we do is we pick up our device to do one thing, maybe send a text message, and we see all of these things and we get sucked in and we spend more time on it than we ideally like to. Exactly the same with notifications. Do a notification audit and see what is interrupting you or coming at you on a day-to-day basis, and you can switch them down or turn them off. Email is exactly the same as well. Most email providers have rich settings, means you can only get pop-ups from certain emails or certain people. Different messages can move to a different folder. So if you have Project X that you are getting 47 emails about, but is not on your radar right now, set up a filter and move Project X into a folder. That way when you're checking your email, it's not constantly popping up at you all throughout your day. And when you do this, the research is very clear that your day starts to look much more effective. You can still spend an hour a day on Facebook or Netflix or whatever it is you like, if that's what gives you value, but you're much more mindful of it. You're much more in control. And your day starts to look more like this here on the bottom, rather than these constant interruptions and constant distractions throughout the day. I'll give you an example in the corporate sector. This is the Mayo Clinic, one of the most prestigious organizations in the United States. They went through a digital transformation which basically allowed doctors and their healthcare staff to receive patient charts on their devices. So if I was seeing a doctor, I could upload my patient data, I could send that directly to the doctor. The challenge was, this had quite the opposite effect that the Mayo Clinic had intended. Because if you were a doctor and you were being notified all day long that your patients are uploading data and you don't know is it important or not, they found their medical staff were spending a lot more time on their devices rather than with their patients or with one another. By reconfiguring the app, by making it less shiny, by reducing down the notifications, they actually reduce the stress in their medical staff and the time spent on it. So that's one thing you can do, which is reconfigure your technology on a day-to-day basis. And by making small changes, you can actually reduce down your interruptions, your distractions, and give yourself more time off. Second thing I want to talk about is how you can get more awareness of your technology, how you can learn more about your own tech usage. And the research is very clear on this as well, that we are very bad at predicting how much time a day we're spending on our devices. Let me give you some examples of what you can do about this. This is a product called Moment. It is available on the iOS platform, so that's iPhone and iPad. And what it will do is it will track how much time you spend on your phone automatically. So you will get daily reports like this of how much time you spent on your device. You will get what times of the day you picked it up and how long you have spent on it, and even richer data analytics at the end of a quarter. There's a very powerful feature in Moment called percentage of your waking life spent on your device, which was certainly a motivation for change when it first hit me with that. You can also use Moment to track multiple devices. So if you have teenagers at home, if you want a sense of how your team are using the devices on a day-to-day basis, are people constantly signing in late at night? It allows you to do things like that. And I think for me, the most powerful feature of Moment is this. It sends you reminders of when you have gone over a certain limit or a certain point in time. It doesn't shut down the phone or blow up the phone for those of you getting palpitations. It just sends you a little reminder that says, actually, these are the goals you've set for yourself and you are now beyond them. In the same way, wouldn't it be great if you had a savings plan and your credit card reminded you that if you buy this thing, you're probably not going to be on track this particular month. That's what Moment allows you to do. And when people start using it, their time on their devices goes down significantly. There's a product called Rescue Time that does much the same for those of you on Android and those of you using desktop PCs. It will give you lots of rich data analytics and it will give you lots of information on that. And again, in organizations, we're seeing companies such as Intel and IBM developing things like techno-stress scores, tech well-being scores, distraction scores, actually asking their employees, look, what is your relationship with technology like? Or you know that digital transformation project we've just finished, how is that impacting you? And they're using that data to keep on track and to make positive change. The Boston Consulting Group is actually mandatory now in team meetings for people to talk about their work-life balance. So every week, the team sits down and says, did you take your time off as planned? If not, what was the cause of it? And importantly, what can the team do differently? So rather than employees constantly running and running and running, they're actually forced to sit down and go, you know what? I didn't take my time off as planned last week because A, B, and C happened, and maybe we need to do something differently this week to make a positive change. My last piece, I have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to talk to you about our boundaries and technology and why boundaries are important. This is a piece of research from the Stanford Persuasive Tech Lab. It's effectively a research laboratory that looks at how you get people to do certain things. And what it's basically saying is, if I want to get you to do something, I can either get you very, very highly motivated to do so, or I can make it very, very easy for you to do so. And we see tech often taking advantage of this by making things very, very easy for us. For example, Amazon were pioneers in this a few years ago when they introduced one-click ordering. Jerry Seinfeld has a really good line about this. He says, thank God for one-click ordering, because if it was 2 clicks, I just wouldn't want the product. So, you know, very grateful to Amazon for that. I'm going to talk about another company that is also taking advantage of this, and it is this one, Domino's Pizza. So Domino's Pizza faced a very particular challenge, because what is the default emotional state many of us are in when we want to order a Domino's Pizza or the Indian takeaway or whatever it is? Hungry, tired, lazy, fed up with the world, feeling sorry for ourselves. And what Domino's found is there was a whole bunch of stuff people had to do to actually get that pizza. You had to pick up the phone and find it and phone someone and get cash and so on and so forth. And in that time, their brains were starting to think, actually, maybe I am tired, but maybe the Domino's pizza doesn't fit with the vision I have for my life. And how can you go about doing that? So you have one-click ordering. Domino's went even further. They introduced an app called zero-click ordering. It's not in Ireland yet, but it is in Australia. So if you set up your data on this app, all you do is open it. You get a countdown timer for 10 seconds, and at the end of that, it automatically orders you a pizza. But you might be thinking, I'm feeling even super lazy, and I have to find my phone and open the app and wait 10 seconds. Domino's have thought of that as well. They have now introduced this, which is the one-touch pizza order button box, which of course, once you set this up, they give you one of these for free. And not only do you have a box with the Domino's logo in it that's ever present in your house, anytime you're craving a pizza, you press the button just once and it gets delivered to you. This is what we call basically the frictionless economy. And there are going to be very good things about it. For example, maybe I want to take 5% of my salary and put it in a savings or investment account. Wouldn't it be nice if I could do that quickly and easily? But the reverse of this is also going to be all of the bad stuff is also going to be more available and quicker and easier than ever before. So what can we do about this? There's 2 particular things. One is trying to make it a little bit harder to get access to the stuff you might want, but not be very motivated to do so. So by increasing the difficulty to get to it, you will only do so when you're quite motivated. This is a product called Freedom on iOS and desktop. What Freedom effectively does is it allows you to create block lists of certain websites and certain apps. Your kind of, kryptonite and the stuff that distracts you. And then with Freedom, you can set up current sessions. So you can say, look, for the next 30 minutes, I want to get a project done. I don't want shopping. I don't want social media. I don't want anything like that. Or what I really like about freedom is you can schedule it. So every morning at 9 a.m., you don't have to have this battle with yourself. Your phone automatically reconfigures itself and says, look, it's the start of the working day. We're blocking certain things. I'll give you a variation on this. This is called Stay Focused. It is a free Chrome add-in. Again, does much the same as freedom, allows you to set up certain websites, create certain restrictions on how long a day you spend on specific websites. And I really like this. The override mechanism in Stay Focused is that you have to type out a paragraph of text, and if you make a single typo, you have to start again. And you can configure this paragraph of text. So you can put in, you were at the conference today and you have new goals and ambitions for yourself, and spending 4 hours browsing the internet is not the best use of your time. And actually having to go through that paragraph of text makes a big, big difference. One final piece on boundaries, and then I will finish up. This is a piece of research from Virginia Tech University, replicated many other places. It is called the iPhone effect. Effectively, what the researchers found is that just having a device in your line of sight, even if it doesn't buzz, even if it's face down, even if you're not looking at, even if it's there, it is shown to be quite distracting. And how many of us now, when we go into a work meeting or when we meet someone, we do this automatically. We put the device in the table in front of us. So put your devices out of your line of sight. It is the old saying, out of sight, out of mind. It has a very powerful effect. We see the same when you're browsing around. So you know when you have multiple tabs open on your browser and you have very serious focused work project on tab 7, but your other 6 tabs are like other things? Again, just seeing the Facebook logo or seeing you have a new message, or if you're on dual screens and on one screen you have the focus project but on the other you have the distracting email inbox or the news or whatever it is, it takes it away. And I think one place that's really important to start with some boundaries is the bedroom. Many of us, our smartphones are the first thing we check in the morning and the last thing we check at night. And I think many of the other speakers have touched on this. Your morning routine and how you wind down for the day are very, very important. So if you want to start somewhere, I would say try keeping the device out of the bedroom. Buy an old-fashioned alarm clock. Maybe talk and say hello to the person next to you if you happen to be sharing a bed with someone else. Get to know them. You'll have a great time. Some good stuff happening in organizations around this. This is Sinead McSweeney, the head of Twitter in Ireland. She has banned devices in many of their team meetings. This is part of Twitter's Respect and Resilience initiative, basically saying, look, we will have higher quality meetings if people are not sitting around on their phones all of the time. And not only that, if you bring someone to a meeting and you make them sit there and they cannot distract themselves for an hour on their laptop or their phone, they're going to tell you about it. And that makes the meeting more productive, or they'll say, you know what, next week I need to be at the second half of that meeting. France this year has introduced a law called the right to disconnect, meaning every company in France with more than 50 employees has to now have a policy around out of hours. And in Ireland, we've had some TDs saying we need something like this as well. So this for organizations may well be legislative rather than just individual. Same in terms of some big companies. I'll give you an interesting example. Daimler-Benz has a holiday policy of no email. So when you go on holidays, you can opt into a policy that if someone sends you an email, it will say, thank you for sending Aidan an email. He's on holidays. Your email has been deleted, and you can send it again when he gets back, or send it to somebody else. So that way you return from holiday with no new emails. So I have 1 minute, I have a little over a minute left, so let me just do a summary of what I've been talking about. 3 things I think you can do. You can reconfigure your technology, think about your notifications, your email, your phone home screen, get more awareness, measure, track your tech usage. It will help you get data on yourself. It will keep you more accountable. And finally, boundaries. Think of the Domino's pizza button box, not lovingly. Think of the iPhone effect, and think of products like Freedom and Flip that help you take away from it. Our essential message is this: we have a choice to shape the digital world, both as individuals and in organizations, or it will continue to shape us. This is what we do in Unplug. We work with lots and lots of different organizations on things like coaching, workshops, keynotes such as this, and we work really hard on the before and after, because I think so many well-being initiatives don't track, are they actually working, and what is the ROI, and what is the business need? And we are very, very passionate about that. We are a year and a half old. We have lots and lots of lovely clients. We go into very